Hey guys, Nathan Hutchison here. Welcome back to another episode of Real Estate Technical Tuesdays. Today's episode has actually come a little bit from a problem that a few recent clients have approached me with. So I thought I'd share the same strategies and the same advice that I gave them on today's live stream of Real Estate Technical Tuesdays. So today's topic is how to get out of upside down or negative equity properties, okay? Now, I'm sure you've all heard of it, the new land developments all here around Adelaide and everywhere around Australia. They're the new up-and-coming booming suburbs. Everyone's promoting them, everyone's spruiking them. Everyone's telling you should buy in now because it's going to be worth a lot more. But as recently, I've seen a few clients come to me that bought into these areas years ago, and basically what's happened is because there was such a large supply in the area, and because so many people heard about you need to buy in the area and they bought in the area, what it did was it's basically supply and demand. So what we found was that a lot of people who bought in the area, because everyone had the idea of buying in the area, and when people wanted to sell, they couldn't sell because there wasn't differentiating factors from their property to the other people's property. So unfortunately, what's happened is in a lot of these areas here in Adelaide and everywhere around Australia is when they've built so much so quickly, when people want to sell in the future, they're actually worth less than the debt that's on them. So that's what we call negative equity properties, properties that are upside down in equity value. So the typical situation for a property is it goes up in value over time, you pay the debt down, and basically what happens is the equity in the property gets bigger and bigger and bigger as you pay the debt down and as the property increases in value. But what we find with some of these areas is the reverse actually happens. So the equity in the property actually becomes, almost stays, it comes down a little bit, but the actual value of the property also goes down with it. So what happens is it ends up being negative equity in the property. So we call that an upside down property. So 3 strategies today I'm going to give you on how to get out of these type of deals if unfortunately you're caught in one of them. So this strategy is going to be very useful. These are the same strategies that I revealed to a few clients of mine that bring these types of deals to the table, that they were in a bit of trouble, and they've successfully put a plan in place on how to get out of them now without going bankrupt. So 3 strategies. The number 1 strategy, the first one that I would recommend is, first of all, find out how much debt is on the property and how much it's exactly worth, okay? Get a few different opinions from a couple of different real estate agents, but not just real estate agents, get bank valuations, okay? Because that's what's really going to matter in the end. Then what you're going to look to do is you're going to find someone who can't get into the marketplace right now because they're a first home buyer, or they're either first home buyer or they've divorced or something like that, and they just can't put the money together for the deposit. They have great serviceability, the banks love them, but they just can't put together the 10-20% for the deposit. And what you're going to do, you're going to market your property as a vendor finance deposit property, okay? Now, why would you do that? It's very simple, okay? You're going to basically get 80% or 90% of the property's value up front, okay? You're going to use those funds to pay most of the debt off on the property, okay? And what's going to happen is, yes, there's still going to be some negative equity in the property, but what you're going to do with the person who purchases your property is you're going to do a vendor finance of their deposit, so that 10% that you left in the property, maybe over a 3-year term, 5-year term, 10-year term, however long it takes and however long you think it's going to take for that property to increase in value over time, okay? Then what's going to happen is in the vendor finance agreement, you're going to say that they must refinance the property on X amount terms, okay? So it might be after the 5-year term, you have to refinance the property, pay us out our deposit that we left in the property, and then you're going to use those funds to finish paying out the rest of the debt on that property, okay? Obviously, by then the property's probably increased in value. You should be able to cover most of your debt, okay? There could be slightly some shortfalls, or you could be in a situation where you're actually positive equity because the property's actually gone up in value over time. So that's one strategy. The second strategy, which is probably one of my favorites, is utilizing the share economy right now to pay debt down quicker, okay? Now let me explain that. So let's say your property has negative equity, the fastest and easiest way to get it back to neutral or positive equity is to pay the debt down as quick as possible, okay? So how you're going to do that is you're going to increase your property rental income by using platforms like Airbnb and short stay accommodation, okay? You're going to lease out your property on short stay accommodation, get as much cash flow from the property as possible, use that cash flow to pay the debt down faster on the existing property. What you might find is after couple of years of doing this, you might actually find that you love the rental income that much that you actually don't want to sell the property in the end. You want to keep using these type of methods. Okay, now that's just another way, but it's a super effective way. So it's all a matter of using further cash flow to pay the bank their existing payments plus additional from the cash flow that's brought in by the property from Airbnb and short-term accommodation. It's a great strategy if you want to pay the debt down quicker and get that property back to neutral value, so then you can get a real estate agent, get an experienced real estate agent that can sell that property for a 5 or 10% above market value. Obviously you need to pick the right real estate agent that can come up with the right strategy and all those type of things in order to maximize the sale price. But you might find with that case scenario, you can get out of the property a lot quicker, and also you can get out with a profit. If you appoint the right real estate agent to sell it for a great price. The third strategy is basically look to refinance. So you might have financed this property 10, 15 years ago in one of these estates, one of these areas, and you might have thought back then that was all you did. So now there might be rates that might be a lot cheaper, and simply by just refinancing the property, you may actually be able to get out at a break even, or in some cases you might be able to get out in a profit simply because the rates have come down substantially from that time you first purchased the property. So you look for, if you're with a mainstream bank now, maybe look for a more, credit union or something where government lending or something like that, where you can get alternatively cheap rates and you can use those to sort of get out of the property. So just quickly rehashing over the three strategies again. So if you have a negative equity type of property or your property is upside down in value, the three strategies you can use today to get that property back to break even and get out at break even or get out with a profit obviously is optimal. So number one is vendor finance the buyer's deposit. Okay, so find a buyer that's really eager to get into the property, ask them to pay a premium for the property, but you're going to leave the equity in the property for their deposit. Okay, they're going to finance 80 or 90% of the property out. Okay, you're going to use that to pay the debt. Yes, there's going to be a little bit of a unsecured debt there with obviously the shortfall, but you're going to have a caveat against the property for your capable interest on that deposit. So what it's going to state in the 5th term or 3 years or 10 years, whatever you agree upon, whatever you think that property is going to go up in value, they're going to have to refinance out, pay you out that initial deposit, and you're going to use the rest of those funds to go pay out that unsecured debt with the creditors or the bank, whoever you got your finance with. So that's strategy one. Strategy two is my favorite. It's using short-term accommodation, Airbnb, places like that, hotels, short-term, all that type of stuff, to create more cash flow from your existing property, okay, and using that debt to pay down more debt quicker and get that property to a break-even point, then appointing a real estate agent to come in and sell that property for a premium. Or, in a better case, you might just continue with the strategy long-term, pay as much debt down as possible, and you might find yourself in a couple of years down the road in a positive equity situation where you might sell and make a profit. So that's strategy two. Third strategy is look for the best rates out there. So speak to a qualified mortgage broker that understands the insides and outs of this type of business. Work with a mortgage broker that might know up and coming rates and how you can refinance out and make a profit, or just break even on that property. So they're my three strategies, guys. This is Real Estate Technical Tuesdays. If you have a question, post in the comments or send me a direct message. I'll answer it on next week's Technical Tuesday. Until then, have a great day and stay great.